Hi, and welcome once again to What's the Damage companion show to the incredibly well-known and popular real play D&D show Roll for Damage, coming soon to a store near you. So, on Friday, our beautiful, sexy heroes delved deep into the belly of the beast, a treacherous dungeon full of undead horrors and dark mysteries and cults and stuff. They navigate these dark, murky halls in search of answers, the answers they need in order to earn the freedom of their friend Oriana, who is, as you might remember, in a bit of trouble. So a plot is afoot, and in order to discover the truth about this conspiracy, the party had to face zombies, ghosts, weird stuff, and even more horrifyingly, Lex was very annoyed with them. After losing and then finding again their sometimes ally, in the dungeon, they encountered some ghosts, I think. Cynric got possessed for what must be like the fourth time. Campion did too, but luckily the two of them were subdued without too much bloodshed. Um, Lex and the group then parted ways, and the party realized that Lex had also parted them with their part of the key, which they need. But that might not matter that much, as the Shields then ended up walking straight into a meeting of what can only be the principal conspirators in this whole big plot, which is probably coming to a head next episode. We'll see how that works out on Friday this week, but we'll speculate about what might happen this week in just a few minutes. As always, stick around after the stream for links, charities, resources, cool stuff. I'm your host, Truth Venson, and this is What's the Damage? Welcome back.
To that
We're
laugh.
just to that laugh. Jay's here for the first time in a while. Welcome back, Jay. Thank you for being on. We've also got Serenity, our wonderful DM. Oh, that's so creepy, Jay. We were just talking about what if people evolved from birds instead of primates.
And if dogs had opposable thumbs.
And if dogs had opposable thumbs, would they have a full hand?
And would it be
or
like
just
this?
A little thumb,
Yeah.
like sticking out of their
Out of-
pod?
Because they already have that back one, right?
Yeah, like a little back thing.
But they can't move
What
it.
if that became their thumb?
That would be completely useless. They would
No, but what if it grew super long to meet the other paws? You know?
What?
Okay, we need to get into our show probably.
Okay.
Instead of becoming strange science facts. That isn't even real science.
Yeah, science facts with Jay. Tune in every Tuesday.
Yeah, that's gonna be the new show, guys.
Yeah, that's our next
coming soon.
That is our next spin-off show, Science Facts with Campion.
Oh God.
Fully in character.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
yes, Doodle.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Look forward to that. So you guys, the party is deep in the belly of the beast right now, and there are ghosts and ghouls and scary stuff. What is the damage?
Yeah, Jay, what's the damage?
Yo,
What's the damage, Jay?
Campion's not a Ghostbuster, so he is afraid of them ghosts.
I mean, after one possessed him, I can see why.
Yeah, exactly. So if you need ghost busting needs, don't call him. Call Boomer.
Man.
But yeah, no, shit was crazy, man. And then like Lex, she was like, "Oh yeah, you guys are, I can't right now," and then she's like walking away. And I'm just like,
Man.
hey,
You know what? Like they had just yelled at Campion for being rude to Lex, and then Quinn is
yeah.
like, "You fucking bitch! I'm gonna murder you."
No, because I'm fucking with Fulton, and you know, it's like, oh, why do you like Fulton? I don't like Fulton because there's something in his eyes, man.
You know what?
Okay,
He's probably
he
part of this
eats
conspiracy.
babies.
He's probably part of this.
Possibly. Don't quote me on that because he might sue.
Yeah.
Fulton?
No.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, the whole thing with Lex and Quinn. I think with Quinn, it's been a long time coming. He has constantly said how he feels like they're bullies. And you know, in this moment, she was fairly upset. She had made it through without taking pretty much any flack from anything on her own, and she had just, you know, gifted them all these items that she found in potions,
The cool shit,
and was trying to lead because she had seen how damaged they were and that they had gotten into something, and so she was trying to go ahead of them to kind of take the brunt of everything, and she manages to take out whatever this creature is and turns around and ends up having to subdue them, and she did without, I mean, she did to Campion without harming him a lot. You know, she did like one damage roll to him and then managed to get him in a chokehold. But unfortunately, Cynric is their barbarian, so the chances of you chokeholding a barbarian, even if you manage to hang on to him for a good long while, he has advantage on strength checks, and his constitution is like a +9. So it's going to take you a lot of rounds to try and hold on to him and stay conscious with him flailing about, and you know, without going down. And unfortunately, he, you know, that's what happened. Quinn got attacked and got hit, and then Lex took literally the brunt of the damage. Like, I think had any of the other characters been hit with Cynric's attack, he would have outright killed them. Because he did close to 100 damage to Lex in that free attack. So she was very hurt. And, you know, she was like, how did this happen? And as she's walking out, she's very observant. And she sees the door unlocked at the other side. And her thing was, when Quinn came to her, he was like, you know, where are you going? And she just wanted to walk out to, like, blow off steam because she's frustrated. And he comes after her, and she's just like, what the fuck just happened? And he's like, I don't know. This place is a nightmare. And that's when she went off. She's like, this place is a nightmare. But that's not the problem. We all know this place is a nightmare. You guys caused this. Like, whatever it was that is not coordinated with all of you is why you're dying. And her I get why Quinn got upset, but like, her whole thing was, if I hadn't have been there taking that damage and almost dying, a bunch of you would have been dead right now. Like, had she not been there, had Lex been out of the room and that had occurred, one, the guy that she killed would have still been up and they would have been fighting on two fronts. Two, likely it would have been a TPK. And so her thing was, you're still not coordinating and you're in this place. This isn't the nightmare. The nightmare is your group's still not working together. And that's when Quinn went off on her. The one thing that's interesting is his view of his perspective of the world is they've berated him and the group and told them they suck, when in reality, I think he feels that more. I can't speak for like how Chad plays Quinn and Quinn's character, but I think he's internalizing a lot of their failures and just doesn't want to hear that they've made so many mistakes. And so every time one of them interacts with them and gives them a bit of like harsh advice, they're telling us we suck and they're saying we're failures and stuff like that, when in reality she hasn't really ever, like, this is the first time I think she said, like, you guys were the problem here.
Yeah, which we kind of do suck, you know, just a little
against really hard stuff, though. You do need to be more coordinated. I can kind of see everyone's perspective.
Yeah, I think everyone's valid.
Yeah. I feel like what Quinn does, and he's not here to defend himself, obviously. I feel like either his approach tends to be either to be like, yes, I do suck, and to apologize, to kind of suck up a little bit to whoever is criticizing him, or to lash out, to lose his temper. He seems to have either like the fawn reaction or the fight reaction.
Yep.
It's like fight, flight, fawn.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Actually, makes me wonder, like when you designed Lex, obviously she's a bit of a brash character. She's a strong personality, she's a bit rude. Were you expecting her to have such a contentious relationship with these characters?
I no. I think she really, but if you look at it, she really hasn't. Like again, she has only helped them.
Mm-hmm.
The only time that she has been like, no thanks, was when they lost the communicator and their bag in Cage Barrow after she had given them information and said like, hey, by the way, this place is bad. Keep your shit on you at all times and like pay attention.
Be careful.
And as soon as they went in, they lost everything. And basically she said, don't worry, I don't need you to do this favor. Also, I'm going to take that back because you guys are misusing it that way. But again, I think she said like, you guys are foolish and made poor choices. But still sat down with them and talked with them. And then even after, like helped them in Riverend, helped them in Zuma. Like I think most of her conversations with them have been relatively straightforward and unangry. Like I think the only ones she's ever had that were like really angry were with Dobby when he first ever met her after she just saved all of their lives and he was like accusing her of being like this terrible person. And then this most recent
Dobby.
One in the heat of a dungeon where she again like took a lot of damage and could have been close to dying and was just like in a bad moment. I think that I didn't expect her to have a contentious relationship with them. And like I said, most of their other interactions haven't been. Like most of the time they've wanted to talk to her. They've called her and exchanged information with her. And they've said like, we should talk to Lex. So I don't think they've had one. It's just interesting that they've gotten to this moment. And like I said, in the heat of all of these things happening, it just exploded.
Yeah. Tough situation. So were you like rolling dice for Lex in the background, or did you make it through it? Oh, so you were. So she was actually having her own little adventure.
Yeah. I had done it actually like after their last session. I was like, okay, well, where would she have been? And she actually went through this centerpiece, and there were quite a few things that she had to fight, but thankfully she was able to like take them out. I think she took about 20 hit points of damage or something like that going through. And then I rolled for her searching all of those rooms. And based on the time that it took them to do their whole search and battle and, seeing all those places and finally deciding where to do, that's when she came out to meet them. Had they have continued down and done some other stuff, she, might have gone further on her own. But yeah, so she came out to meet them. So yeah, I was rolling dice and seeing what she would do.
Behind the scenes. Cool. Okay, so Jay, it's been so long since you've been on. And quite a bit has happened since the last time we spoke. So can you tell us just a little bit about how like you and Campion are dealing with this particular plot? Because it's very complicated, it's very intriguey. It seems right up your alley.
I mean, personally, like it's up mine. Campion, he's kind of figuring this out as like shit's going on, man. I'm trying to like I'm trying to play him as kind of he's trying to figure things out, not trying to go too full Dobby into it, man. But like
Ghost of Dobby possesses you
as intelligently as possible. Exactly. Yeah, I should have went full Dobby. No, but it's just in his case with this whole thing, a lot of things just like connecting the dots, and it's just like, oh, there's weapons rolling about, what are like the best points of like this is a secret organization that works with the government and everything, kind of like this country
Hmm.
CIA. What would the CIA kind of do, or like it's kind of unification. Their whole mission is unification of like their whole society, and the best way of creating this unification is having a common and like tangible enemy. If you don't really have
Hmm.
one right now, the best way is to create one. And my mission, my idea was like, oh shit, shit's getting real. Maybe the bombs are like interior, like what's going on? Like they're creating a weapon, like it's just a lot of things that are kind of all over the place,
Hmm.
and it's just like I was like, oh, maybe Oriana's folks are involved with this too secretly,
Maybe.
and then you know Oriana's like it's going to Oriana's kind of like we're in this area, like this involves her, like maybe she's trying to get recruited by somebody, and then it's just like maybe there's double agents everywhere, man. I don't know what's going on anymore, man.
Yeah,
And I
that's
see
funny, funny.
Serenity. She's in her little fucking box bubble, fucking giggling. Yes, he's going
And
insane.
it was none of those things. It was something completely different.
Exactly. Which I'm just like, fuck.
Although
That's
you
funny,
haven't figured out
funny.
the whole plot yet, but you're
Hmm.
you're getting to that point.
Yeah, but like I'm trying to keep it in my mindset because Dobby would have been this like, oh yeah, like Butcher's involved, but then you know, fucking Champion doesn't know anything about Butcher
Yeah,
or his
no one
Hmm.
capabilities.
really put any
No
butcher
one
into this.
at this point. Yeah. So it's just
Didn't
like, yeah.
didn't the party know that Butcher was potentially involved though? Did Dobby mention that?
Dobby did say he was like, yeah, this smells
Hmm.
like butcher all over it. This is poison. This is his shit. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
how deep he goes into it, but he's involved into this situation. And they took it into advisement, but I feel like they kind of, oh, this is kind of all over the place. They kind of forgot that, Butcher was involved. Well, I think Boltaim still remembered, in his
Hmm.
sense. Like Boltaim kept bringing that up, and then when they were having that whole
But they don't
conversation.
know him. They've never really seen him
Yeah.
at
Hmm.
all, and they really wouldn't know what to look for as a group
Hmm.
without Dobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's they're kind of blind in this whole situation altogether.
Yeah. I wonder how Butcher will react to learning Dobby is dead, if he does learn
Oh
that
man.
Dobby
Maybe,
is
yeah.
dead.
There's going to be dependent on what the group does and how they
Yeah.
deal with this whole
Hmm.
Because
hostile
even like
Yeah.
situation.
even Dobby, like, he had this whole like mindset of Butcher. But what if I'm seeing from
If you're
the little
wrong,
cookies, the little cookies that Serenity
I
was
mean, you heard the
pushing.
conversation he had with
Yeah,
Frayne.
I was if you were to play that back, and my face was like, wait, no. I was like, oh shit. And like now, I really wish Dobby was.
Yeah.
Really do,
Oh
dude. Um.
man, Dobby would be losing his shit.
Oh
Yeah, it'd be
man,
very interesting to
yeah.
see how Dobby would have handled this situation. I
Hmm.
I had this planned way back from the beginning that this would
Mhm,
be the intersection of Baltaim's and Dobby's sort of
mhm,
stories
mhm.
Hmm.
and how they both sort of converge and then diverge again depending on their
Yeah.
choices. Um, but yeah, it's always nice to see that even though characters may have passed on in nature,
Hmm.
you're still going to see the outcome of some of what they
Their
would have,
plot.
yeah,
Yeah.
their plot because the
Yeah,
world still
which
includes
is really
them.
cool because Serenity's put this work in, and it's
Hmm.
like this. It's now, even though this character's gone, the elements that are a part of them
Yeah, like it's
are
like
going.
he made an impact on this world and
Yeah,
on this story.
yeah,
It's
and like
cool.
and it literally it's like this world is bigger than any
Hmm.
of the party. Shit's going. So if any, so even if all of them are die, shit's gonna continue on. And yeah.
Oh, thank you for giving me the clear to TPK you all, Jay.
TDK all of
I
us. Oh fuck. Oh god, what did I do?
Oh no. Oh, lordy. Yeah, I do kind of hope that Butcher finds out about Dobby because I want to see like his perspective on their relationship because we got Dobby's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, mhm. Okay, so do you want me to just mention that? It can't obviously, but we'll see,
Yeah,
we'll see.
Campion, corral that group and make sure that you get that information.
I'll try. I
All
have to.
right.
In the 5 minutes before combat starts
All
next
right.
session. Cool beans. Okay, so Before we move on, I want to know, Jay, what's your wildest theory about what's really going on here? Do you have any really huge
Yo,
ones?
man. Yes, I think I do.
Hmm.
I feel like Butcher was preparing Dobby for something more. Dobby only,
Hmm.
got this whole thing, and then in his mind, it was just really this one kind of like, oh, Butcher's the enemy. But I feel like there's layers on that, and Butcher, his layers are, he's involved in this situation, but I don't believe in the way of how, we all perceived it as such,
Hmm.
especially that whole kind of conversation between him and I keep forgetting his name from Lexicon.
Rain?
Yeah, Frank. There we go. Yeah, him and a friend and like that whole kind of dynamic of what was going on. Because I was listening to that whole conversation, I was like, what the I was like, Butcher was ready to go. I was like, yeah, he's like, oh yeah, we're ready for this shit. And he's like, oh no, we're not. This was not in the plan. Which I'm just like,
Hmm.
Butcher was is not this is not in Butcher plan. What the fuck's going on? A Frayne is
What was
must
Butcher's
be
plan?
must be must be way better than Butcher at this shit, man. The intrigue goes into levels. We're in
Hmm.
Inception right now. You know, where's the flipping
The
buildings, man?
layers,
I'm
man.
telling you. But yeah, it's that, man. It's fucking bonkers, dude. Um, I still think that um they're trying to establish like a Frayne's trying to establish some serious shit in Atrial. I don't think like him in control, but I feel like he's trying to acquire something, and he's using Voltaine's sister as a tool or stepping stone for that means to an
Hmm.
end. That's just my shit. Serenity's like, fuck you, Jay. You don't know shit. I'm
I'm
like, okay, cool.
you. I mean, maybe you'll find out in this week's session. You'll find out some of it. Maybe.
Maybe.
But,
It'll be exciting no matter what we find out. Okay, awesome. So Serenity, could you tell us a little bit about like designing this dungeon crawl? It's been a pretty long one. I think it's been a while since we had like a proper crawl.
Yeah, so I generally don't like dungeon crawls, just because
Hmm.
there's so much with them, and like you have to move the tokens around the map, and you have to use like dynamic lighting properly and everything like that. But I figured they're going into like this forbidden tomb. I was gonna like base it off of kind of like a necromantic lair, um, and they knew sort of the history behind it, or a little bit at least from Oriana, and so I wanted it to really feel like this locked, forbidden place that
Hmm.
had um, a lot of history about why it was there, but also have the mystery of what was locked away and why it was sealed, and what would be needed to fully unseal this place, to get access to the full nature of it.
Hmm.
And To be honest, I don't know. Obviously had there was other places, other areas that they could have explored, that they didn't. Um, and Like that first door that they went to, they never actually went through there.
Hmm.
They couldn't pick the lock. So yeah, they haven't really explored every single room in there. Not that they have to, but I made sure that there was enough there that it would tell the story of what this place became.
Hmm.
And now that they're kind of like in this defiled sort of ceremonial sort of end room, you can see like this is where the majority of likely those warriors of ages past that were raised, where their bones lay now, as they eventually decomposed, and perhaps the magic sort of wore away at them, and now they're being used
Hmm.
once more for this nefarious purpose of this meeting or whatnot. But it's why this area is like heavily desecrated, and why it felt so strange when they walked in there, and felt so negative to them, because this was where the root of all that necromantic energy that brought back these warriors were. So yeah, I wanted to actually make like a dungeon that was like more investigative,
Hmm.
and like seeing through illusory walls, dealing with like guards and wards, trying to find keys, and having a couple of encounters here or there to have them have to think about resourcing, and like if they were going to stay with Lex, like she have stayed with him at the very beginning, that second fight probably would have been a lot easier for them. You know, so there was the potential of her. There was also potential of them not even meeting with her. Like if they hadn't have gone in the morning and had decided to do things differently, like they might not have even had her as an ally in that dungeon, and they would have had to do it all themselves. So there was like a lot of possibilities for like how it would play out, but I always knew how like the final sort of scene would be. Depending on when they went, they would get more or less of the conversation. So they got what they got at the end there, but also because they weren't stealthing into there, so they got heard pretty quickly. But yeah, so that was kind of how I wanted to make it. And like I will probably do another one at some point, but like I try to break it up because dungeon crawls can feel very like sloggy sometimes. Yeah. So I try not to do them too often, but when it makes sense, and I felt like for this kind of lair, this kind of tomb, it would 100% make sense.
Nice. Yeah. So what happened was actually very dependent on player choice. Like it
and
wasn't like
still,
this cutscene will happen no matter
yeah,
what.
like, and based on what's currently happened, there is very much still up in the air, and like the actual campaign could shift directions based on what players choose to do here. So I actually informed all the players, and I said, like, by the way, guys, like I'm terrified, but also excited as a DM, because depending on how you guys play this out and what happens here, a lot of different things are up in the air, and this campaign may very well shift directions for you guys. So it's kind of like one of those very pivotal moments. But again, we're getting very close to the end of like the first act of this campaign. And so, yeah, this could determine what Act 2 actually ends up being.
Wow. So tune in on Friday, see what happens.
Yeah.
Wow. So no pressure, guys. Exciting, very exciting. Oh, okay. So I actually had a question that isn't specifically about this dungeon crawl in this like episode, but it is related because so when you have like NPCs who are helping the characters like in combat and serving as sort of like a support character, how do you like run those? Because obviously you would run those a little bit differently than you would for a real character, because NPCs are there to support the player characters for the most part. But how do you make them like useful without completely overshadowing the character? Does it matter? Like how do you balance this kind of thing?
Yeah, especially a character like Lex or any one of the members of Lex Eterna, because they are quite powerful NPCs. To be honest, I run them very much sort of like mostly in the background, but I will have them step up when I see like when I notice if the players have used like a lot of resources, or they've taken a lot of hits, or they kind of like need the assistance or whatnot. Like it was actually nice because when they were like having that whole debate at the beginning, I was like, well, does Lex kind of like want to stay with them and listen to like their banter back and forth and just like choose a direction or whatever, or is she going to figure out this other thing? And then I was like, you know what, they're bantering for so long, so I kind of took Lex out of the picture, and I was like, okay, so for the first half of the dungeon, they're probably not even going to find her, and that's like another thing that you can do, and it felt very organic. Like it didn't feel like that was just a decision that I made. I was like, yeah, she'd find this thing, like she's super observant and whatnot, and it makes sense for her. But for them, it was just like, shit, we lost her in the mist. She probably went down the stairs when we went up. And I like doing like, so that's a way that you can kind of like make sure that your players don't get like a level 20 NPC like with them all the time to like defeat all the monsters and like
they just
like do everything. But then like similarly, like the reason I had her to unlock the door and go in first was they had just taken a whole buttload of damage. Like I think Perry was at like 22 health, Oriana was at like 20 HP, like Quinn was hurt, and I was like, well, I don't want them fighting this big thing having not rested and stuff like that. Let's see if Lex can whittle it down. I honestly didn't think she was going to do like that much to it. But I was like, you know what, even if she does, like they were going to short rest anyways. They'll short rest, use a bit of their stuff to take a short rest and then move on. So that's why I had her go in. So you can also use your NPCs like that, where it's not overshadowing the players, just helping them in a sense, like giving them But then also, if you're using an NPC that's not overpowered, like there are a lot of times where I will use like an NPC that is like around the same power level as the characters, and then I'll just scale the encounters to give them a little bit more challenge, but knowing that they have that like extra resource, and based on that extra resource, like what they're going to fight.
Nice. Okay, I think that brings us to our topic for the day, which is battle maps. Woo.
Yeah.
Woo. Woo. Okay, obviously we have had some pretty cool battle maps on this show. So just kind of a first vague question, what makes for a good, effective battle map? Like, are there any traits that all of them share, or is it really just completely dependent on what kind of game or campaign or even encounter that you have?
I think there's levels to it. So if
Mhm.
you're doing a theater in the mind, right, a battle map can be very good for like directional shit, like what's going on. It's like a vague kind of, place ground of like what's going on within this area of combat, especially if it's like a swarm that you're fighting, or if there's just too many, like there's a lot of elements going on, like
Mhm.
traps with also NPC combat, so it's good for that. Then there's the deeper levels of where if you want to get detailed, um, which I pretty much enjoy,
Uh-huh.
um, where it's like, oh, you want like singular things, like it's a battle map, but it's also kind of an area where your players can explore as well, like
Mhm.
simple shit of like what's going on. Oh, I found the cooks, cooking, but then there's like also a bottle of poison right there. Are you gonna, what are you gonna do in the situation? And it's just kind of like within that spectrum of, you need it for necessity, and then you go into it because you just want to go that little bit of extra step for yourself or for the game, you know.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah. For me, I mainly use it to like I like theater of the mind, but I like giving a visual to my players of like the environment that they're in. And for D&D 5e at least, it's not a system that lends itself very well to theater of the mind because there's so many things
Mm,
that are based on like rules
Mhm.
of like, are you within 5 feet of something? Are you within 10 feet of something? Are you ranged? Like how far are you? And like trying to theater of the mind the distance is very hard, especially when you have a large party.
Mhm.
If you're playing with like a party of three, maybe you can get away with like not having a map, and especially if it's a simple combat. But if the
mm,
DM's running 8 enemies and there's 6 party members and they're all spreading out across the map, it's really hard to like when the wizard says I throw a fireball, how do they know how many
Mhm.
of the skeletons they're getting in the blast or whatever? So I find battle maps often help with that and give them a good understanding of like where to position themselves, where they can go. And then I go like the extra mile. I like having like the 3D maps because I think the atmosphere, like obviously I use music in the
Mhm.
campaign, but having the atmosphere and the lighting and the feel of where they actually are and where they're fighting and this different terrain really like ups the stakes. And like again, if we were doing it, in person, I would opt more for like the actual like physical like Dwarven Forge-esque
Mhm.
kind of place sets than like just a rolled out battle map where you like draw like a building on it, just because I like the idea of they'd be able to see elevation. And again, like I
Mhm.
use that in our games and stuff like that. If they're flying, I add the flying token to them and stuff like that, and I show them that the ledge over here is actually 10 feet higher, and they can actually see it in like a 3D battle map. They can see that there's like an orthographic sort of view of the map. So yeah, I feel like it gives atmosphere and it gives tension, and it really puts a picture in the players' minds of like,
Mhm.
this is what this place looks like that you've been exploring. But I only tend to do it for battles. Like I less use it like Jay does. I mean, there are times where the characters have after a battle like explored and I give them that moment, but most of the time like I
Mhm.
don't make them wide open spaces, except for this most recent dungeon crawl where I made that like really large map that they were able to like traverse, but it was a very simplistic map because it was so large. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So when did you decide you wanted like those fancy moving maps for your campaign? Also, where do you source those?
At the very beginning, when I was setting up the game, I knew I had to find maps that. So first of all, like I don't have a ton of time. I work a lot.
Mhm.
And when I first started this, I was running 2 campaigns and I was playing in like 2 other games. I'm okay at thinking up plots and stuff like that. Terrible at making maps most of the time.
Uh,
And that's just not where my like creative juices flow so much. I've done it like once or twice before, but I knew I needed maps of general areas that I would want to use, and
mhm.
you need to find that from places that will allow you to show them on stream and give credit where credit is due, but allow you to do that with attribution. And I started to find out about dynamic dungeons, which is one of the main ones that I use. And then I got into Patreons with another one called MapGuffin and RPG Scenery. And those are the three that are the main sources of 3D maps that I use. And ever since the first time I saw it, and I believe I saw it on I was like searching the internet, and I saw that Joe Manganiello and his crew actually use
Mhm.
Oh
dynamic
yeah.
dungeons
Ooh.
maps, but the way that they do it is in real life. They literally have a TV set into their table,
Hmm.
and they
Oh.
post the map on their big like 40-inch or 50-inch
Hmm.
TV, and then are able to place their minis on the actual moving map as
Very
they
neat.
play. Yeah. So when I saw that, I was like, well, would this translate to like Roll20 and VTT? And
Mhm.
it does very, very easily, as you've seen. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And ever since I saw that, I was just like, I can't go back to old maps. Like this is just too cool. And
Mhm.
so yeah, ever since I've been using the 3D
Nice.
animated maps.
So you mentioned you don't make maps very often. Jay, do you make maps usually
Oh,
for
I
your
do.
camping?
I
Where?
do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Could you both talk
where?
about like, no, I was gonna say,
Oh,
could you both talk about like what are some good tools you know for map making?
oh, yeah. I personally use Dungeon Draft. There's like
Mhm.
others that, that are pretty complex that you can get into that are like, you can high details, but I feel like Dungeon Draft is a good easy starting point. Because it already has assets and stuff that are already in there that are pretty good. You can add your own assets. They have places where you can download and buy assets, so they can just add that all in there. Um, and then you can just add on. I remember when I first started though, I would directly use Roll20. Even so, you can start there.
You could just
I
paint
had
them.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would literally like get like a blank kind of battle map, and then I would just build onto it,
Yeah, with the
with the
props.
assets,
Yeah.
yeah, with the
Mhm.
props and assets that I would upload in there, and it was very time consuming. I feel like if you go to a dedicated program, it's a lot easier and streamlined, so then you can just move whatever you want, and you can get as very critically detailed as
Mhm.
possible. I enjoy it because I find like, oh, like I'm thinking like, oh shit, man, this is gonna be like, I imagine myself like in this area and like what I would see, and oh man, there's like a desk under here, and then like in this desk, there's like a golden dagger on this bed. You can see like equipment from uh an adventurer who's bought this in place, and they have their gear spread out everywhere, man.
Mhm.
I feel like it creates just another layer of character and detail that just pushes your character, your players' characters in that mindset. That's where Serenity was talking about with these movable maps,
Mhm.
and like the music and the ambiance it gets you in. But this is just more simple in that sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few. I've used one called Dungeon of Fog.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah.
actually get free maps from there as well. Um, but the main ones that I've used is one that's on Steam. It's called Dungeon Painter. Well, two that are on Steam. One's called
Oh,
Dungeon
no,
Painter
Dungeon Painter.
Studio.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's actually how I made the map for the mansion. So I built that was one that I built based off the Candlekeep Mysteries adventure that I did it off of, but I made the map. And then the other one is called Wild Shaped, and it is actually it allows you to make basically a 3D map not animated, unfortunately. Well, you can use the animated version, but you'd have to use it in the software. I'm not quite sure how to. I guess you'd have to like record the screen in order to take like an animated version of it. But basically, it allows you to create a 3D map with 3D assets and everything like that. Again, that orthographic view, and that's how I built the house of what was his name in Zuma? Did I call him Bal? No, Kelvor.
Kelvor.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So his house when they went and met the Vicar, the king of the Free Kingdoms. That was built in Wild Shaped, and again, that was built by me, and that was like that 3D esque map of the house. So I've used that before as well. So yeah, there are like a lot of tools that you can use that are fairly interesting and easy to build through. Or you can be lazy like me and just Patreon a bunch of people and use their stuff, because there are so many good map makers out there. And there are, I mean, again, if you're not streaming and like there are like some like Reddit groups that are like, there's like a Reddit battle maps one that I follow that I think honestly is like open for use, but I try not to go on there because I never know if it's actually or if it's more like you can use it in your game, but only if you're doing like a home game and you're not like like showcasing it. But there are a lot of great communities that have like amazing map makers that make like super detailed maps that you could probably like borrow for your game and are super cool with it, as long as it's like a home game and you're just like using it for your own players. So
yeah, the ethics are a bit simpler if you're doing a home game versus streaming. Yeah. I remember when I used to make maps for my campaign, like way back forever ago, like 4 years ago. Like actually creating the map was part of my process for planning an encounter, because oftentimes I just have like a very loose sketch in my head of what the encounter would entail. But as like I made the map and kind of just like drew it out and like placed assets and stuff, I'd add layers and layers to the encounter and be like, okay, well, here's a little puzzle they can try to solve while this is happening, or here's a trap door, or here's a cool like secret area where they can find something, or just like here's how this will work. Unfortunately, this encounter happened after Serenity left my game, because she would have absolutely
but your final map was so cool.
Thank you. I drew that one. Yeah, but there was one in the library set up like a panopticon, and part of the encounter was like learning the guard schedule. Like the guards would pop out and they'd be able to see them. They'd go to a different door and you had to like hide amongst the stacks, and it was really
that's
fun.
So cool. That's super cool.
Yeah, you would have liked that a lot. You would have loved the library. Anyway, making the map I always found was a really good way of visualizing your own encounter and just making up some cool shit. Cool. Okay. Okay, so have you guys, like, most of us like play online exclusively or almost exclusively. Have you guys like used physical maps before?
Oh yeah, I've man, I actually am subscribed to a couple of channels that actually go over, map assets and like making your own, shit, because man, getting official like stuff is Dwarven Forge is very expensive, man.
Yeah, Dwarven Forge is so expensive, but they're like the best in the industry probably for that.
It's so good.
But there's other places that have like pop-up stuff that you can get from like pop-up books and stuff like that are much cheaper.
Yeah, like they have like just like literally books, and then you flip through them on like the rollable two-side maps and everything. Yeah, but if you just want to make some quick, just scatter terrain or like books, I know in one of them, Black Magic Crafts, man, like he just makes these very simple but like very like beautiful like log houses and trees, man, just like different shit, man. And it's like, bro, just get some foam and just simple paint and like a hot glue gun, and you're doing it, man. So yeah, most of my stuff though when I moved, it got fucked up. But yeah, no, yeah, man, just like craft. You can do simple crafts, man, and just whatever you can. Players understand, but like, just a little effort, man. It goes a long way.
Yeah, for me, my DM used to use like either the big like rollout white sheet and would like draw, or would have those like battle maps that you can buy that are like whatever 20 by 20 that would have like a specific scenery. Also, like a bunch of my friends were into like Warhammer, so a lot of like the Warhammer terrain and stuff like that was able to be used as per like battle map stuff, which is great. So if you like any kind of like hobby general, like I don't know, like army stuff, or like any of those like where you fight your army against theirs, whether it be like Warhammer or one of those other types of like big ass like campaigns against each other. A lot of that stuff can be reused for D&D because it's just terrain, or it's just like vehicles or whatever that you can kind of like place in there for extra use. And same with like the minis. Like sometimes if you need to show like a crowd of people in a city and like a big dragon's coming to like fuck up the square or something like that and like destroy stuff, and you want to show like all the people that are like running away and stuff like that, you can use your old minis and stuff like that for that. So we often had that kind of stuff out for our campaign. So yeah. I've seen both, but I've never played with Dwarven Forge stuff. It's just like I only really learned about it as I got into like online D&D. That's when I started to learn about Dwarven Forge, and I was like, this stuff exists. And I've constantly debated on like, I should get some of this stuff, but I'm like, well, first of all, where would I put it? Second of all, like, who's gonna like, it's gonna look pretty and I'm gonna have it, but I'm never gonna use it, not right now anyways. If I ever find a group where I can play like in person and have use for it, I will 100% get some. But
yeah, and if you have a 3D printer, I mean, like literally at this point, yeah, dude, you can just print miniatures. There's
and terrain.
Terrain. Yeah, there's like Patreons that like groups. I forgot.
Yeah, that do the STL files. Yeah,
the STL files that are already pre-supported, and then you can just print as many as you want, man. It's like I think it's like maybe $5-10, and it's like 20 to 30 fucking miniatures, dude. Like the files themselves, and like if it's a resin or if it's like just full on. Yeah, you can just print
even
that.
Hero Forge, you can buy the digital file and then just print your miniature yourself.
And then boom, man, you're doing it.
There you go. You are Dwarven Forged.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think a lot of not a lot of, but like some libraries and a lot of universities also have like 3D printers that you can use. Like they're open to the public too, so
there you go.
Reuse, recycle, and
probably just pay like a little fee or whatever for the resin, and
or you can bring your own resin too.
Yeah,
but like,
perhaps.
Yeah. Cool. Get crafty. Awesome. So is there such a thing as like a bad battle map? Are there things to avoid? Are there like some things that are just not effective, or is a bad map a battle map?
I think like a bad battle map is one that you are trying to use for your terrain, but are not adding in the necessary items to like make it clear to your players like what's there. For instance, if you've not created your own battle map and I don't know, you're using the interior of a castle room, but in reality there's like a raised dais or there's a wall in between, but it doesn't show on the map. Like you can't expect your players to go into this battle map and then be like, no, you can't fire your Eldritch Blast there because there's a wall. And it's like, where? It didn't exist on this map at all. Like there's no wall there. So I would say like that's a bad battle map, but like make sure that when you're using a map, even if it's not perfect for your purpose, like Jay said, like there are props and assets that you can use from like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or whatever that you can add in to change the map to be the structure that you kind of want for your area. For instance, the map that I just used for this battle, none of those bones and blood and everything like that were on the map itself. It was just like a very plain room. I added all that in to add extra understanding of like exactly where they're standing and what they're going to be walking on, and where they are in the room. So like you can update. It's the same thing I did for the I think one of the runes that they went in, I put in like bookshelves and barrels and things like that that were not a part of the map itself. They're just added props to like give them things to mess around with and to interact with. So yeah, I would say like that's a bad battle map, is like make sure that when you're showing this to your players, this is exactly what they see, because that's what they're going to use to plan their tactics. And if you're telling them there's a wall in the center of the room that they could have been hiding behind and now they can't shoot through, and they didn't know that, like that screws with how they're planning their battle, and it's not fair for you to punish them because you didn't set it up correctly.
Yeah, I feel like a bad battle map in general is just is one, you kind of don't mesh well with, like you're trying to make it something that it's not. I'm like, if you don't have the time to edit something, and you're just pulling something, but it's not something you're fitting with or like overall jives, just save it for later, man. I have a full folder of hundreds and hundreds of like just pre-made battle maps, man, just ready to go. Just if you can't find specifically what you're trying to go for or look for, plan something around a map that's as close as possible and just have fun with it, man. Nothing has to be fully perfect, man, bro. Just do what you can, and support the rest. Support with some enthusiasm, and you're golden, baby.
Yeah. If push really comes to shove, just open a
Mm.
blank document and draw some lines.
And
There
draw
you go.
some
Yeah,
lines.
draw some squares and
Draw some
rectangles and
lines.
circles. There you go.
There you go, man.
Yeah. That was actually my next question. So, like, how fancy do you think you need to get? Like, what's the absolute bare minimum? Obviously, it's like lines and squares.
I think.
Ooh.
Oh, I think
Oh no,
bare
no,
min.
no.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Go
So
first.
I think bare minimum is if you're good enough at setting the stage for your players. Again, a battle map is mostly for them to visualize where they are and understand like where their placement is and what they need to search and stuff like that. So even if you're just using circles and squares and lines, a lot of players will appreciate that. But if you've given them a description of like that's the battlements of the tower that you're going into, and it's crumbling and it's going to be very difficult, and it's completely pitch black inside of there. You can see that there's no light and you're going to have to squeeze through there, and you're also not sure of the structural integrity. And over by this corner is a bookshelf with all of these musty old books, and you can smell the mold coming off of the pages, and there's a window at the far side, but it's smashed in, and you can feel the cold air of the wintry morning blowing in. Like I think most players are not going to be like, wow, this game sucks, it doesn't have an animated map, fuck this, like, or this doesn't have dwarven forged glowing lava. God, what kind of DM are you? Like, most people aren't
Or
going to
the
be like that.
LED lights,
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're gonna be like,
dude.
oh, this is awesome. Okay, like the first thing that's popping into their heads is like, I need to go search that bookshelf, but I'm like gonna check for traps on the ground. I want to make sure like these glowing runes aren't gonna like explode me or whatever. Like most players are really happy with whatever they can get. It's just like the help of visualizing where they are and getting that description is what makes it, I think. It's the DM and playing with your friends, less than like all the bells and whistles on top of it. Those just add.
For me, like it has to be. I try to make it as detailed as possible because the way I have for, especially in my combat, it's like I have both the players and the NPCs utilize elements throughout the entire like fucking space, because I remember there was a combat within an inn, and I had literally a guy smash through a keg barrel. Like he smashed through it. Yeah. And so I had that whole planned out. And then while he was in there, I had another dude grab the barrel and like just roll him down, throw him at the rest of the group. So that was a whole like interaction,
Donkey
and
Kong.
like, yeah, especially. So I wanted him to be like, oh, like the barrels are over here, and I wanted them to also be like, like at least a close enough one-to-one to where like, oh, he's by a piano. I want to smash him into the piano. So yeah, I try to have it to where like they can utilize
The
everything.
environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So I think we mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, but like to what degree is a battle map there to enhance combat, and to what degree is it there just so you can keep track of where everyone is?
I feel like it's a little of both. It's really just what you need in that moment.
Mhm.
If it's like regular, like you can't plan for everything. So a lot of the situations, like you will gonna have a chance, like it's gonna pop up where your party gets into a situation where you didn't plan like a whole encounter to happen, so then you have to like bust around and do a whole magic bullshit, So in that whole sense, it's literally about trying to get the point across. How Serenity says it's like, this is where everyone is, and these are the details that come across to you guys. Work it out.
Mhm.
But if you want to like, not where you have like a pre-planned situation and like, the group follows it to a T. I feel like the extra little bit of effort, it just kind of pushes it over the top where it's like, oh shit, oh this is a situation. Oh, he went all out. Okay, yeah, we gonna take this seriously.
Mhm.
But that's just in mine. It's whatever the occasion calls for in the moment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, for me, it's both. Like I said, I use battle maps so that everyone can kind of like place themselves and understand where they are. But then I decided to go with animated maps because I feel like it elevates the ambiance. There's like the background noise of like the wind or the rain or the snow or the howling of the undead or whatever in the corridors, or the bubbling of the acid pits or whatever, that add that extra like oomph to the combat and to like the situation that they're in. And so it makes it much more like real and like intense. But I would say that like a lot of and I feel like that's become more true over the years, because I like old D&D, it was like those white and blue maps where it was just literally
Yeah,
there.
just like a grid map.
Yeah, a grid map just for you to understand where you're standing. And I feel like over the years, as story and ambiance and environment has become like more of a thing in being a part of telling the players like where they are and what they're seeing, there's been these added elements of like the extras that go into making the map, and that's where we've got like these more detailed maps. And now we've got these like dungeon drafts and dungeon painter studios and stuff like that, where you've got colors and you've got furniture and all of this stuff. And now there's even like a Kickstarter which I backed called Dungeon Alchemist, which literally is a 3D static image, but you literally just click and say like what you want, and it will use AI to lay out the entire room for you.
That's
I
very
think it's
cool.
coming out later, or they're doing the beta later this year. So who knows? I may use some of those in the campaign itself. But yeah, really really cool tools to really like dress up the atmosphere of where players are. So yeah, I think we've come a long way, and now a lot of DMs go alongside this is for your tactical understanding of the battle, but it also gives that extra added like you're in the shit now. Like, what are you gonna do?
Ooh, look at these little skulls. Look at this glowy water that's actually moving. Exactly. Yeah. And D&D is so fancy these days. I feel like everything's so fancy.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up, have you ever done like a complicated or big like combat or encounter theater of the mind without a map? Could you do it? Would you want to?
I would lose my shit constantly. Like I have such a short-term memory. Like I would just be like, "Oh, there were goblins there? Fuck me, man."
Like, right, fuck the goblins. Yeah, they do something.
I have, but it's very hard, and it's like you're trying to keep track of like the math in your head of where things moved. And when you get into like the 3D like space, like have things that are flying or things that are digging underground, gets even more complicated. And then when you have structures and things that people can hide behind, gets even more complicated. And then when you have things that can be like set on fire or like affected by like a spell or an environment change, gets even more complicated. So I have done it once with like a boss encounter. But but it was very hard to keep track of, and I wouldn't do it again because it's just so hard. And again, I think like as a DM, you try to be as fair as possible to the players, but it's very hard to like be like, yeah, you're close enough, or no, you're too far, or you actually like walked out of the room and the wall is now blocking your line of sight from this thing, and they're like, well, I wouldn't have gone there if I had known, and it's like, okay, well, like, so I just it just makes it like very, very complicated and difficult. So yeah, I tend not to, at least not for a system like D&D. For like World of Darkness or Fate or things like that, it's much more fluid.
Maybe, yeah. Well, Fate, I think like the players are also kind of making up what's happening, so
exactly, they can spend points to change the environment and stuff like that.
So it's probably better not to have a map in that case, because it's gonna be like, I want to move this wall. Oh, okay. Lovely. Okay, so and that's our time for today. Maps, they're for you, but they're for us too. They're great. We love them. They can be super fancy, they can be super not fancy. They're mostly here so we don't die trying to remember the goblins. Okay, thank you guys so much for being on the show. Tune in next week for more of this show. Tune in on Friday for a pivotal episode, apparently. Check out our Twitter. We tweet stuff. Mostly.
Yeah, we're doing an art crawl right now. You're getting to see all of the art of a lot of the characters and NPCs and items that we've had commissioned. So stay tuned for that. We've had a lot of great artists. So.
Yeah, Serenity has commissioned so much art. You should definitely check out our Twitter to see some of it. Check out our YouTube. We've got all of our backlog of everything on there. Check out our podcast. It's this show and also the other show, so it's fun. You got work, listen to something. Check out our Patreon. We have exclusive stuff, mostly behind the scenes stuff for our patrons who we love. And join our Discord if you haven't already. We post lots of memes and talk about current D&D events, mostly memes. And thank you to Sunbird and Lee Meows, who have done our wonderful theme song and our absolutely gorgeous title card. I think that's it. Have a good night. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Oh, Jay's gonna die. Yeah, he'll never be on the show again. Sorry. This is Jay's last episode.